Hello and welcome to the BuiltOnAir podcast. BuiltOnAir is a regular podcast where we talk with everyday people and learn about the amazing things they are doing with Airtable. Today's podcast is sponsored by OpenSide, the leading solutions provider for Airtable customers. Check out openside.com to learn more about their products and services that can take your Airtable usage to the next level. Use promo code BuiltOnAir to receive $20 towards any product purchase. Hello, BuiltOnAir listeners. We've got a great show for you this week. On today's episode, we speak with Aron Korenblit from the education team at Airtable itself. You may recognize him from Twitter, the Airtable forum, Airtable webinars, and his live stream videos, in which he teaches users how to get the most out of the powerful tool we know and love. Aron talks with us today about the exciting release of the Airtable Platform, which launched this week at the time of this recording. The launch focused on 3 pillars: Airtable Automations, Airtable Sync, and the Airtable Marketplace, each filled with tons of new features and possibilities. Airtable Automations, which has been around for the last couple of months, has received a slew of new possible actions, including new integration options with external apps and 2 new triggers. Airtable Sync is an answer to a long-awaited feature request, allowing one-way, cross-based syncing. Finally, the Airtable Marketplace is the new home for Airtable Blocks, now called apps, and includes custom apps built by users, such as the Scheduler app by our very own Kamille Parks. Today, Aron shows off what the Airtable platform can do by demoing these new features for us. If you hadn't had a chance to try out the new features yet, this episode is a great place to start learning about them. Check out the show notes for more about the Airtable platform, links to upcoming webinars, and Aron's live streams.
Okay, so kind of 2 objectives over the next 10 minutes. Let's imagine we are a campaign management team. So what that means is we kind of manage tweets, blog posts, all the content around a specific launch, right? So we're going to put ourselves like we're creating furniture. However, the furniture we release is decided by the product team, the manufacturing team. So we don't necessarily have visibility into those specific launch dates, what we're launching. However, we need to structure our campaigns around that, right? And so just going to quickly introduce the base that we're looking at. It's got 2 tables, campaigns and content pipeline. And what we see here is that whenever we've decided that, or the product team has informed us that a product is about to be launched, we create a campaign around it. So we've got 3 campaigns. Let's say fall 2020 is Traverse Coffee Table. That's the coffee table we're going to launch in the fall. 3 statuses, for each potential campaign: upcoming, which means that we know that launch is happening. There's a specific product. Building is when we start creating the content around that. And live means that the campaign is ongoing. We create an owner and then target specific channels. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram for that Traverse Coffee Table. That is a multi-select field. And then you'll notice that for each one of these channels, we create an associated content post. And that's where we start drafting those posts. So I'm sure this structure is familiar to you, Ali. I'm sure you've got a base that is similar to this with the hundreds of content pieces that you manage.
Right.
Cool. So then content pipeline are those different pieces that we're managing, right? So we've got a Kanban view of the different pieces that we're trying to manage, drafting to ready to publish to post it. So that first challenge of this team is when our products launch, what do they look like? All of that happens in the product roadmap table that I'm going to open up here. Let's go into the all products view, which is a Kanban view. So this is maybe this team, is working out of this base and they're updating information. And really, there's only a subset of this information that's important to the campaign team. I don't necessarily want to have access to the whole base because there's a lot going on here. Really, what we want to know is when products are locked, meaning a launch date has been decided, that is at the point at which the product team, or the campaign team, I should say, should be aware of that product, right?
Yep.
So when you think about it, the only information that needs to be shared is this launches view. So this is a grid view where we've set up the filter such that It only shows records where status is any of locked or launched.
Mhm.
And then there's a lot of information that is pertinent to that team, what category it's in, its cost, its materials, its colors. So when we think about it, this is the view, this is the information that is pertinent to the campaign team. What you do historically for folks who are Airtable users, well, there's two options you had. You either invited everyone to the space and that person had to kind of manage those two bases, or you'd create a shared view. Being that that is how folks would work out of today, we thought the best place to share information from is directly from this share view functionality. So here it creates a shareable link just like before. However, there's now this option, allow data in this view to be synced to other bases. What's important is that the rules and the kind of configuration will match your existing view shared. So if you have a password when you want to restrict to an email domain, only folks who enter that password or that correspond to that email domain will be able to sync the view. Does that make sense? Any questions so far?
No, that does make sense. So would it be if you're in a table with a synced view that's restricted with a password, do you have to enter it when you click on the table, or can you just not see the table?
Right. So let's say I have a password set up on my shared view, and I want to sync that view. I would first have to enter the password just like I would to access the shared view.
I see. Okay.
Right. And once someone has access to that shared view, they can then sync it to whatever base they want.
Okay.
Right. So it's that existing granularity, that existing control that sits on top of synced views.
Okay.
But let's imagine that we want to let anyone for now just sync to this view. When you turn it on, it says, okay, do you want to sync it right now? Now that you're in this domain. So I'm going to sync it to my campaign tracker. So let's sync this view to another base, brings up that shared view dialog and says, where do you want to sync this to? So I want to go to the unlock the power of Airtable, and the base is going to be the campaign tracker. Then some options you can either copy, but we want this to be up to date. So I'm going to create that table. And now we see that in our campaign tracker, we have this launches kind of sync table. You'll notice that it has this little sync table emoji, lightning, which is intuitive now, that says this information comes from that other synced table, that view. So anything that changes there will be updated here. However, this is so let's actually do that. I always think that there's no more power than showing off what it looks like. So let's actually go and update some information, right? So let's say this Madrid chair is now, let's add a new product into this view. Let's do that. So I'm going to go put myself back on my product. I'm a product person now. Twist side table. Let's set a date there. I'm just clicking on that. Let's say this is launching next week. Let's move this into locked. Now, sync tables update every 5 minutes, roughly. I'm going to go and manually sync. And then we see twist side table is now updated. It's now, I don't need to talk to the product team as much as I love the product team. They're great people, but I want to be informed in my base whenever something changes in there. So you saw that it entered the view. So if we go into launches view, we now see that twist side table right here. It's now in my launches view, and it gets reflected into my sync table. So that is that functionality just in and of itself. That's, I don't know. I still get excited about this every time I show it off.
It's so cool.
It's really great.
Yes.
Now this is a table in the base. So what this means is you can then start treating it as a table. And examples of what you can do is you can create linked records, right? So let's say we want to create a new campaign around that product that we just added. So I'm going to add a new record here. Let me remember the name here, twist side table. So let's say it's winter 2020 twist side table. I can call this upcoming. I'm going to put myself as the owner. We're going to go into Twitter and Facebook as those channels that we want to target. And now I can do a linked record and say this campaign is around this specific product. So I'm going to call this product. Whoops, could actually type in the right field. Product, go into the linked record functionality, and now launches is there. So let's save that. And let's add twist side table. And you'll notice that this acts just like a linked record in, I'm just going to move that here, in our campaigns table. So I can't add records, right? Because the records have to be added in that source table. However, I can add fields in my target table to be able to treat it exactly like an existing table. Now, the second thing I do want to quickly show off is that it also acts just like a normal table when it comes to automations. So for instance, let's say we want to be alerted when a new record is added to our launch table, which means that we have a new kind of campaign we need to prioritize. So let's kind of configure an automation that says when a record is created in this table, which means that it was created or added in that source view, we want to send a Slack message to the whole team saying, hey, we need to create a campaign. So quickly into the second functionality that we introduced, which is automations, which lets you create custom trigger and action sequences on top of your Airtable base. I see you kind of smiling every time I'm going into this, which is really great. It's so great to have like live reactions. I know you've seen it before, but it feels like it's still exciting for you.
It is. I get like giddy about Airtable features.
Yeah, same. So here, what I'm going to do is, send notification for new product. And, so every automation is composed of an action, a trigger, and then potentially multiple actions. Triggers is what you want your automation to be triggered on, what sets it in motion. So our trigger is when record is created. You can do when record matches conditions. We can explore, if we have some time at the end, some examples of that. So when record is created, which means a new launch, right? A new record was created in this table, meaning a new product has been prioritized. So we're going to select the launches table. Let's click done. Add an action. We're going to send a Slack message. I can select a Slack account. Let's say I don't have a connected one. This should work. This one should work. And then let's go social campaigns. That's the channel I want to send to. And then you kind of have complete control over what you want that message to say. So let's say we say new product has been locked. Product name, if I can only type, is, and you can go and get information from previous steps. So going into step one, what we want is the name of that product. This field right here. So let's insert the name. And let's say product will be, let's actually not put the date. Let's save some time here. And let's say link to product and pull that URL. So someone in Slack can just click on the URL and see the information. An example of what you can do later, you can automatically send a meeting so that you talk about that product using the Google Calendar action. You can tweet about it. You can do whatever you want. So let's click done here. Let's turn this on and let's kind of go through this automation.
All right.
Let's go into product roadmap, all products, which is the Kanban view. Let's say data side table is now locked. Note that I have to manually do this just because I don't want 5 minutes of silence on your podcast. Now, data side table is a new record. Right? We forgot to update the launch date. Let me go do that. Launch date 25th. One more time. Sync. Now we have that launch date. Still get excited every time.
Oh yeah.
And then if we go to the automation itself, we see that it's ran successfully to let us know that that Slack message has been sent. If I go into Slack, I'm clicking on a tab for folks on the podcast side. and I can see a message from the Airtable app saying, go check out that product. Data side table is now locked, and you can go and it'll link to that record in your base. Whew, exciting, right?
So cool. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you've shaved off, at least even just setting this up, it just saves like 5 minutes without having to go to Zapier, set up a view and everything. And oh my gosh, it's just wonderful.
Yeah. In just that ability to be in sync between teams is just a huge unlock. So that was an example of working these two together. And just one last thing here. Let's imagine now that we have our campaign that's tied to a product. So I'm looking at the linked record that matches a campaign to its product. We can also look up information. So it acts just like a regular table and regular field. So I can say the launch date, and let's look up. All right, let's go look up the product, right? That's our linked record. Let's look up the launch date. Let's save that. And now we have our launch date here, but there's kind of like a single line arrow that goes from the product table. So this product is called twist side table. So let's say the manufacturing team is hitting delays and it's saying, you know what, we're going to actually launch this on October 30th. I've just updated that record in the product table. I'm going to sync here. This has been updated. And then in my campaign table, that launch date updates. So really, and then you could potentially have, you can see or track specific updates to records or fields. So if launch date is super important to you and you always want to be on top of launch date, you can do when a record changes or is updated and send a notification from there or change information in other systems. So really, unlocking folks to be able to stay on the same page, easily. And so, just going to move maybe to a base that's a little more built out, just to show a few examples. I won't go through them, but I just want to show folks, especially for folks joining on YouTube. So here, this is the same campaign tracker. Maybe we've been working at it for a few more months. We've got that launch table that's synced, same information. Mm-hmm. So if I open up automations, you'll notice that we have many more. So I just want to quickly walk through what they do, and then we can peek behind the curtains. I do want to spend 2 minutes, 3 minutes at the end at least, just showing off the new apps.
Yes.
So we now have 2 campaigns that are in upcoming, and you notice that when we move them into building, that's when we kind of create the content pieces. So we've automated that because each one has the same structure. I'm going to actually show you in the content pipeline. Mm-hmm. So each one has that same structure where we have that Facebook post, the name of the product, we have its channel, we have the status. So these all have that same structure. Mm-hmm. So what I can do is that if I move fall 2020 into building, I want to create these link tasks depending on different channels I've prioritized. Mm-hmm. So if I move this to building and just spend a moment distracting you, there now have those 2 linked records. And how we do that, just quickly going to show you, is we have these create action items. So let's take Twitter, for instance. It says, when a record is in building and has channel Twitter, every time a new record matches those conditions, that's going to set off this automation that creates the record. And the record that it creates is that action item in the content pipeline to draft that tweet in the content pipeline table. So it sets the name of that record, it associates to the right campaign, sets the right status, and sets the right channel. So if you have anything of structure that needs to be replicated, sometimes something else happens, maybe event management, a new contact comes in and you need to create tasks around or action items for that specific content or contact, I should say. This automation is extremely powerful. Now, I'm sure you already have 4 or 5 places in your workflow where you're using something similar.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. And I'm wondering if you were to say remove Twitter from one of those, from the multi-select in the building status, would it add it again when you put it back? Like, would it add a third linked record?
Not the way I've got it set up, right? So right now, our workflow, the way it's set up is that we decide channels in advance, and we want to create action items for those specific, like for the specific channels that we've decided. And that's why in the automations, we have 3 different. So every time we have Twitter as a channel and it's set to building, we create that action item. However, I think you bring up a great point that automations are only a reflection of what you've decided your process is. So kind of very important, and I recommend this more generally, that before you create that automation, think of what your process is and make sure that folks understand what that process is. In our case, we always decide channels before we prioritize that campaign. However, if you were to prioritize first and then kind of decide or brainstorm what channels you want, you can then add that, say, channels are locked and you have a check mark, and those are the conditions that you want your automation to trigger on. And so because automations are built on top of filtering mechanisms, so just like the filter you have here, you can get extremely granular and you have extreme flexibility into when that automation is triggered. So really kind of think of what is your process, what is a good way, and then build the automation on top of that process. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the best things that I've found so far about automations is that they can trigger more than once on a record, even if it's when it enters a view. If it enters the view again, it can trigger again, which is not possible in Zapier.
That's totally right. And so every time a record matches the conditions, it's going to trigger. And you're right that for workflows that depend on that, that's extremely powerful. I wouldn't say word of caution here. Note that it triggers. So I just want to make sure it's clear. It triggers every time.
Yeah.
Right. So if I was to move this back into upcoming and then move it back into building, we're going to have 2 new tasks. So again, it just comes back to make sure that you both understand how the automation works, which is it'll trigger every time those conditions are met, and to think of if our workflow requires us to go on back and forth, well, we need to make sure that the automation is triggered when we want it to. Now, I don't want to make this sound daunting. It is not. We just built one in a couple of seconds, but do want to make sure folks understand that it is triggered every time. So one other automation I do want to show off here is that you can actually kind of go ahead and send information to other applications directly from Airtable. So let's take this eCrore chair. Naturally, the education team that helped me build this base gave me names that I cannot pronounce. So thank you to them. This is the fun that we have at the education team. We had the choice of going with very simple names or names that I have absolutely no chance to pronounce, and we obviously decided on the latter part. So let's say I want to say this is a great chair. You should sit in it. It's a great chair, ergonomic, great tweet, send tweet. There we go. That's the copy for that tweet.
Love it.
And you notice that we have an image here. So I think I have the image downloaded. Just give me a sec. I'm going to add it into assets. Let me just find that assets right here. And I want to upload that image. Oh, I don't have the image. Let me go and get the image. Let me download that. There we go. Let me just make sure it gets included into the tweet. And for some reason, I cannot download the image. Let's just give it a coffee image because that's what I have on hand. And I'll show you just for this specific tweet. So we're adding an asset. Hopefully it matches what you want to tweet about in the future for folks listening to this. And once that's uploaded, what our process requires is that it gets moved into ready to publish. So what ready to publish is going to do is going to check what channel you want to send on, going to get the copy, get the image, and tweet it out from your Twitter account. So let's go into here. Let's say I move this into ready to publish. This is going to fire off a tweet from my kind of channel, right? You'll notice that it did 2 things there. Now it's in posted. So if I go to the top here, tweet around eCrore chair. Oh, that's not our right one. Let me find it's probably at the bottom here. There we go. The only one with the coffee image is now updated to posted. So let's just quickly look at the automation. We can see send tweet. We can see in the run that it's run successfully. Mm-hmm. And what this does is that it checks when a channel is Twitter and something is ready to publish. That means it kind of fits our criteria for the tweet to be sent off. It first sends the tweet. So it goes and gets the copy, adds the asset, and then goes and finds that record with the copy that we just sent off and updates it to post it. And now if I have the right Twitter account here, there we go. The other one, I don't have my account here, unfortunately. So I know that it's been tweeted, and I'll find it and I'll send it off. We'll add it to the show notes. I have the wrong account here. But I can tell you that it's been tweeted.
Excellent. We'll definitely put that in the show notes for sure.
Yeah. So essentially any kind of triggers or actions, including things like Twitter or Facebook or Jira, Google Forms, Google Sheets, you can send information to that and kind of mix and match those actions as you'd like.
So cool. Just super impressive. And every time I see people working with it, I get more and more ideas. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, I agree. And so, last words here are have fun with it, build, and please let us know what it is that you built. We're always super excited to learn about how people are using Airtable, both in ways that we expect and ways that we hadn't expected. And that's always great.
Absolutely. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today and taking the time to talk with me. The pleasure was all mine.
Yeah, no, truly it was all mine. So this was so much fun, Ali. I hope we do it again in the future. Hopefully we'll have just as a big launch in the future, but please don't hesitate to invite me or anyone else from the team before then, just to talk Airtable. It's always a joy.
We'd love to have you back. Thank you so much. And thank you again for all of the wonderful new goodies. I know I'm excited, and I'm sure all of our listeners are as well.
Awesome. All right, Ali, have a great day, and let's do this soon.
Definitely. Thank you, Aron.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to give it a like or hit us up on social at BuiltOnAir. We always love to hear your comments and suggestions. And don't forget to subscribe to catch new episodes when they release. It helps us keep the podcast going.